Hey, again, I'm really, really glad that you're here today. I've been open about this over the years. I love to golf. This past year, I played a tragically limited amount of golf. It almost didn't even count as playing. I played almost none. But there are some things that are true regardless of how many times I play golf. They're just true. One of them is that if you ever have the tragic experience of playing golf with me, this is one of the things we're going to do together right here. I'm going to show you a picture. This is one of the things we're going to do. This is how it works if you're going to play golf with me, okay? Like there's 4 of us. We're all going in the woods because I'm really good at hitting the ball in the woods. I'm really good at it. And here's the thing. Like you got to understand that if I go golfing with John, there's probably a lot of hunting. I got to look for things. There's a poison ivy risk probably. Like you just got to go in knowing these are part of the equation, right? And the challenge when you hit the ball into the woods, the challenge of like then going to look for the ball is that's my fault. Sorry about that. It's really easy to end up looking in the wrong place because you don't actually know what happened when the ball went in the woods, right? Sometimes you'll hear it hit a tree and you're like, oh man, that just made it more interesting. Sometimes you don't hear it hit the tree, but it does, or it's off the second, and it could be anywhere, right? And so you go in, and if you have good friends, they go in with you, and you're kind of looking for the ball. And then, sometimes if it's not there, I've also been this guy, like I've got to do this sometimes, right? You just got to you just got to do it, right? It just is what it is, right? That's me. I'm really good at that. And here's the problem. You go up to a body of water on a golf course to look for your golf ball. If there's any consolation, it's that you're not the first one to hit your ball in there. So when you walk up, if the water is at all clear, you can see all these golf balls, and you've got an idea where yours went in, and I'll do that. I'm going to get one. I'm just telling you, 95% of the time I pull out somebody else's, right? I'm not quite looking exactly in the right spot, right? It's just easy, like to be looking, but not quite looking in the right spot, to somehow just barely be off a little bit. And today, I want to talk about this vulnerability that you and I possess as humans to be think we're tracking towards God, but actually maybe be looking where He's not, and to maybe have the right motive, maybe even the right intent, but to be looking in slightly the wrong direction or place. In order to see it, I want to invite you to grab a Bible. We're going to let, as always, the Scriptures be our guide around this life-giving truth that Jesus would want to bring us. If you turn to the book of Galatians, which is in the New Testament of your Bible, or if you're going to scroll on a phone or something like that, that's great. Galatians is a small little letter written by a guy named the Apostle Paul, who is a starter of churches, a starter of communities that would follow Jesus. He would go to places where the gospel, the story of Jesus, hadn't yet been presented, and he would introduce people to it through public discussions and common gathering places and where people worked and in synagogues. And so he would have these discussions, and then a lot of times later he would write letters back to these people. And Galatians is a letter that he writes to a group of churches in the arena of Galatia, right? So this letter is going to travel around. But when people read it, there's a little bit of this watch out tone to it. There's a little bit if Paul would have titled the letter something other than the geography that it's labeled as now, he might have titled it hey, watch out. As followers of Jesus, please watch out. Because there are really elaborately developed schemes by the enemy to scam you and to mislead you and to misguide you and misdirect you. There are elaborate schemes and plans whose sole purpose is to misguide you in your understanding of where Jesus is. Elaborate schemes that, if you're a follower of Jesus, would let you stay just close enough that you think you have everything, and yet be missing so much of what Jesus is offering. Galatians chapter 3, let's look at it. We're going to start right off just in verse 1. He says, "You foolish Galatians." Now, Paul's honest. You never really had to wonder what he was thinking. Paul's one of those people, it's if he was live today, you just know, wherever Paul is, you get all of Paul. There's there's no diplomacy. It's just straight, here it is. This is what I think. You foolish Galatians. You careless Galatians. You careless people. Who has bewitched you? Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. Let's just hang out there for a second. What Paul's really doing in one line is saying, please remember the cross. Please remember the cross. You understood, you were introduced to Jesus as this one who would come from heaven to earth and sacrificially absorb who you are and all of your sin and all of the separation, all of the brokenness. He would absorb that, become that, take your place on a cross, experience death so that you could experience his life. He was literally trying to make a trade so that he could give you who he was. He's like you saw the cross, and here's what you knew at the cross. What you knew when you understood the cross and you remembered the cross was that you got to Jesus because of Jesus, not because of you. You got to Jesus because Jesus came to you before you went to him. You got to Jesus because of his strength, his love, his motivation, his power, his purity. You got to Jesus because of Jesus, not because of you. You got to Jesus because he loved you enough to do a cross. It's like you saw that Jesus and you were drawn to that Jesus. You foolish Galatians, you were drawn originally to the Jesus that you heard about having been on a cross and experiencing a death and then a resurrection. That's the Jesus you understood. That's the Jesus you were drawn to. That's the Jesus you began a relationship with. And if you're here today and you're a follower of Jesus, if you are really genuinely following Jesus, if we were first captured by a cross. We weren't first captured by our own goodness. We were captured by a cross. And the fact that Jesus would allow himself to experience the brutality and the agony, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, of death, so that you and I didn't have to. We were drawn to that. And maybe today you're wondering about Jesus or still a little resistant to him and maybe you're asking questions, maybe you're not even asking questions, but here's the story of Jesus. Jesus really is motivated by love. Jesus really did everything to get to you. Everything to get to you. So Paul plays that out in one sentence, and then he says, now watch out, because here's what happens. And he says, verse 2, I would like to learn just one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit of this Jesus by works of the law or by trying to keep a list or by your own goodness or by believing what you heard? And that the picture Paul uses for believing is not what you and I often think of, like, did you figure out 2 + 2 in your head? Did you figure out the logistics and the code of this? He's like, no, did you actually put your life in his hands? Did you believe enough that you would trust him? Did you believe enough that you would trust him? If I brought a chair from home up here and I sat on the stage and I said, well, that's a chair, and I believe it's a chair, how I would really express my belief in the chair is to actually sit in it. To trust that it would do what it was designed to do, which is hold me up, like to be able to hold me when I sit. Paul's not asking, did you believe that was Jesus? Did you believe? No. Did you believe that was Jesus? Did you actually put your life into his hand, under his control? He's like, isn't that how you started? That's how you came to Jesus. That's how you met Jesus, not by just like memorizing all these laws and following those. You believed in him. That's where the relationship started. After beginning by means of the Spirit drawing you and convincing you of Jesus' love, are you now trying to finish? Are you now trying to keep the relationship with Jesus by means of the flesh or just in your own strength? Are you trying to follow Jesus just in your own strength after you came to him because of his strength? Did you come to Jesus because of his goodness and now you're trying to stay with him based on your goodness? Did you come to Jesus because of his goodness, and now you're trying to stay with him based on your goodness? That's what Paul's wondering about. He's trying to help them think it through. Verse 4, have you experienced so much in vain? If it was in vain, Verse 5, so again I ask you, does God give you his Spirit and work miracles among you? Last week we talked about some miracles that we've seen collectively as a group of people. It's like, does God do that? Does the Spirit work miracles among you by works of the law or because of your own strength? Do you experience God's miracles simply because of your own strength and your own goodness? Or by believing, by putting your life in Jesus' hands, by putting your life under his control, his leadership, his authority, his power. Do you see, here's what Paul's getting at a little bit is this, hey, you came to Jesus one way because of his goodness. You're trying to follow Jesus another way, your goodness. You came to Jesus because of his love for you, his sacrifice for you. Now you're trying to follow Jesus by some other way, by something you do. And see, here's what happens when we live that way. And this is why Paul's saying, watch out. And I want to show you something that if you're a follower of Jesus, you've experienced this, and you might be experiencing it right now. And if you one day become a follower of Jesus, I want to try and say, watch out early. Like, watch out now. Right? Like, watch out now. If you're a follower of Jesus and you've experienced this, like, watch out, because you might be experiencing it today and not know it. Not know it because again, it can oftentimes be so subtle. Here's the reality. A lot of times we kind of position ourselves on one side of a wall or a barrier, and we kind of envision, well, this is where we live. And for sometimes good reasons, we think, well, this is where I am, and God is like over there somewhere. God's over there. I'm over here, and God's over there. Now, I know I met Jesus through a cross, like because of his cross. Like, I met Jesus that way, and I was one with him, but somehow we get into the rhythm of life, and while we started with a cross, we're trying to walk with something else. We think, well, Jesus is over there. And there's a couple of reasons. For example, just quickly on this one, for example, we often picture God over there somewhere out of a sense of false humility and out of a reality of minimizing God's goodness and love to us. We will get over here and we'll say, well, God's over there because I don't really deserve his attention, and I didn't deserve salvation. He's got bigger things, and I don't want to seem ungrateful. I don't really, he's got bigger things, and I've got it really good, and so we almost envision, like, God's over there because he can't be troubled. God's over there because he can't be troubled. And we'll put it on ourselves to say, well, because I'm just me. And God's got, yeah, but listen. If we started with a cross through which Jesus came to us, why did we turn and push him over there? If we were valuable enough that he would come and get us, why are we now no longer that valuable? If we're valuable enough that he would come and get us, why do we now think he doesn't have any time for us? If we're valuable enough that he would express his sovereignty to come and get us, then why do we now live like he doesn't really give a rip about us, and so he's over there somewhere? And if I'm desperate, I can call to him. But even then, and because he's over there, if I'm going to bother him, I've got to pray, and I've got to do this thing just right. Or somehow the prayer will get lost in this in-between space. And so we create this barrier. Let me talk about another one that we'll spend just a little more time on. A lot of times this wall, this barrier, this fence that gets erected between us and God, it gets here because of our sin. Because of our choices to somewhere along the way, even as followers of Jesus, to live like God kept something from us. He held it behind his back. We live like God might relate to us with scarcity and with limited love and limited kindness. We live like at the end of the day, yeah, God's God, but I think I know better on this one. Yeah, we don't really like his idea. We don't like his principle. We don't like his pace. We don't like what he's passionate about. We want to be passionate about what we're passionate about. And so we make choices of our own. We live independently, and we get this sin, and it creates like what we feel like is this barrier. And then here's the challenge. Now all of a sudden God's over there. God's like over there and out there somewhere. And we start to almost instantly wrestle with the question of how do I get back? How do I like get the barrier out of the way? How do I, how do I get this? Like, how is it that I can knock this down? Can I take enough hammers to this? How is it that I can climb the fence? Like, what is it? We'll pile on, like, okay, if I don't do that sin again for a few days, then we'll be good. We don't say it that way, but right? Like, if I don't do it again, if I will just pray differently, if I will serve a little more, oh man, God, you're going to see me read the Bible like never before. Okay, right? Because we've got to God's over there. I don't want God to be over there. We started with this cross, but now we're like, oh, I got this sin, and it's a pain, and it's a barrier. Like, I want to be where God is. But here's the challenge. All of this that we're trying to do to get back, and listen, if you're a follower of Jesus, you've done this. You've done this. You've done this. So if there's a sense in you right now that you've never done that, you're doing this. You're trying to get back on, right? Because what we do is like, well, God is over there, and I'm over here, and God came to me initially through a cross, through his goodness, but now it's my goodness that's going to get me back. It's my goodness that can restore this thing. And the only thing we're left with is God over there leads to striving. God over there, that leads to striving. I got to be good. If I want to just kind of move this one little notch at a time, then I got to be good. It's my goodness that would move it, right? God over there, that leads to, I got to climb. I got to work, right? Do you hear it? Do you hear it in Paul? Like, you started with like this simple belief in the profound love expressed by Jesus in a cross. Why are you now living like it's all up to you to get back? Why are you living like God is over there and he's just waiting? Why are you living like God's over there and a relationship that started based on his goodness is now fully relying on yours? What if this? What if this? Just come along on this thought with me for a second. What if part of what Paul is getting at, that when we believe in God, we like put our faith fully in him? What if when we have something like sin, what if God isn't over there? What if God's not over there or over there? What if God's over here? What if the God who came to us through his Son and through his goodness and through a cross, what if he's not over there? What if he's over here? What if God is over here on this side of the sin with us? What if God isn't over there? What if God isn't over there, arms crossed, disengaged, threatening to walk away? What if God's over here? What if God is over here and his emotions are so intense that we feel them? You ever been with somebody whose emotions are so intense you feel them? You feel the grief they're in? You feel the joy and the celebration they have? You feel the despair they have? You feel the wonder and the amazement they have? You know, it's like to be with that. It's just like, man, you can feel it. What if God isn't over there? What if God is over here? And what if God's emotions are so intense that we feel them? What if God really is disappointed when we sin? And what if we feel that? And what if God's disappointment is driven by this reality that he now sees a barrier to the life he has invited us into? He now sees potholes we didn't need to have. He now sees bumps and bruises and trips. What if he sees the barrier of just that sin slowed our life down when we thought it sped it up? What if he's just disappointed not just because of what we've done, but because of what we've caused by what we've done. What if God is over here and he just so intensely grieves for us? What if he so intensely loves us that we can actually, in the midst of this despair and this brokenness and confusion, we could actually feel his love for us? What if we could feel his hope of what is still out there? What if we could feel his hope in the potential of what's available? What if we could feel the hope of the healing he can bring to internal brokenness, relational brokenness, whatever brokenness sin has caused? What if God is not over there? What if God is over here, looking at our sin with us, and while experiencing disappointment and grief for us, is also experiencing hope and belief in what can be, and eagerness to help and desire to work with us? Like, what if? Well, if God would be over here, then think about the contrast. Because God over there, well, that leads to striving, but God over here could lead to strengthening. Right? God over here could lead to strengthening. God over here saying, man, I see that, and man, I wish that wasn't there. I wish that wasn't there. Man, I wish that wasn't there. I wish you wouldn't have made that choice. I wish you, right? Look, we've all got people like that in our life who we watch decisions, and because we love them, we grieve the decision. So when we think that God would grieve our decisions of sin, don't think it's because God's angry and unjust and unkind. We feel the same things when people we love make decisions that damage their life, right? You're much more like God in that way than you might think, which is shocking because we were created in his image and all those things. But what if God over here, it leads to strengthening? Because here's the gift. Here's the gift. Listen, you got to catch this, right? God's not over there. God's not over there. He's not over there all dismayed and given up on you. He's over here with all of his emotions and all of his emotions and thoughts that are motivated by his love. He's over here. God is over here, and he is working on your sin with you. He is not over there waiting for you to work through your sin. Okay? God is over here working on your sin with you. Not over there waiting for you to work through your sin. God is not over there saying, okay, figure it out, I'll be here, figure it out. Nope. He's over here saying, okay, like let's navigate this. And he's prompting, he's nudging, choices we can make, different avenues we can take, ways we can get help. He's nudging reminders of our identity and who we are in him and how he's made us and how he sees us and how he relates to us. He's nudging us to take steps towards healing and rebuilding and freedom when it's an addiction. Like, right, listen, God is over here working with us. So when we talk about, let's just go to some extremes and then pull it back a little bit. But when you go to an AA meeting because you don't want to be enslaved to alcohol, God is not outside the AA meeting saying, man, figure that out tonight in there. God's in there with you saying, let's work through this together. When you sit in a small group of people or a one-on-one conversation and you're having an honest conversation about your addiction to pornography, God is not outside the meeting saying, figure that out so we could do something together. God's actually with you on this side. Look at it, say, let's work on this together. Like, let me prompt some steps of healing and freedom for you. Okay? When you're looking at this pattern, or maybe even this moment you had, where you gossiped and you didn't want to, when you smeared somebody's reputation and you realized you didn't want to, right? When you slandered and you realized you didn't want to. God is not over there saying, well, if you can keep your mouth straight for 30 days, we'll be good again. No, he's over here saying, look, could we talk about what comes out of the core? Could we talk about maybe the hurt that launched those things that you didn't really want to say in the first? Could we, let's work through this together, right? When you were in school and you didn't want to, but it just kind of happened, you looked and you started cheating or you started lying or you started deceiving a teacher or a friend, right? God isn't like, well, I'll see you again next year. Nope. He's on this side of it saying, okay, right. I see it. I get it. My son Jesus, he was tempted to cheat the system too. Like he was tempted to like take all the shortcuts. Like we get it. Like I'm over here. Like let's move through the why and how I can help you in the right. Look, God is not over there waiting for you to work through your sin on your own or even just with the help of people. He's over here saying, let's do this together. Let me prompt you into the right relationships. Let me prompt you into the right environments and in the right spaces. Let me prompt you into these moments. Let me help you with that. He's working with you. See, how do you know? Like, let's go back, beginning of the Bible. I have to turn here right now, but Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve, the first people created, they commit this sin, right? What do? They live like God is holding out on them. Like God said, don't eat from that tree. It's because God doesn't really like us like he said he did. And they fall for all these lies, right? Why is that? Because there is a concentrated effort from Satan and his kingdom to deceive and trap us, to paint weird illusions about who God is and who we are, when all along God said, no, look, I created you to be with me and to be like me and help some other people be with me and like me. That's why I've created you. And so post this sin, Adam and Eve, like instantly they just break down. They're like, oh my, what have we done? What have we done? Right? And so they start to panic and they get filled with this shame and embarrassment. And in verse 8, you hear them, and Adam and Eve, they hear the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day. Do you know why that's in there? It's because that's what they were used to doing with God. That's what they were used to doing with God. That's how they knew God is over here. But now they go hide. They're like, we're going to have to, we should probably go hide because God's over there somewhere. God's over there somewhere. And so God says, where are you? Now, like God's not on a fact-finding mission. He's not working on a certification to be a detective in the Garden of Eden. None of that, right? He knows where they are. He's trying to help them understand, where do you think you are? Like, where do you think you are, and where do you think I am? Right? Where are you? Where are you? Here's the reality. Adam and Eve thought God was over there somewhere. God's trying to say, no, wait. Like, you think I'm over there somewhere. But I'm actually right here. Adam and Eve, we could work through this thing together. We could navigate this. I am God, and am I grieving? I am. Man, sin brings pain. And sin costs, and it has a price. And you're like, you're moving differently. Yes. But do I love you? Yes. Am I crazy about you? Yes. Do I have the strength to redeem this? Yes. Is there a sacrifice that'll make the way right? Yes. Yes. And yes. But Adam and Eve, the first people, and then the first people to sin, they got fooled by it. If Paul could have written Adam and Eve, he might have said, you foolish Adam and Eve. You started with this belief, this trust, this active trust in Jesus. Now you think you're going to try and get back on your own goodness? So if you can go hide and clean things up a little bit, then you can come be good. No. God's not over there. He's over here. Here's the reality. Listen. Sin is an illusion that births a grander and more painful illusion. Sin is an illusion. Sin convinces us of the idea that we can do something better without God. It's an illusion. Sin always promises what it can't fulfill. Always. Sin always promises what it can't fulfill. That extra relationship's not going to fulfill. That extra money, it's not going to fulfill. That greed, not going to fulfill it. That shopping thing, not going to fulfill it. That addiction, not going to fulfill it. That bitterness, not going to fulfill. But sin always promises it can. But then here's the thing. That's an illusion. It's an illusion. But then look what happens. It creates a grander, more painful illusion by actually convincing us that God's over there somewhere. It's like worse than the first illusion. It promised one thing it can't deliver. That's bad enough. And then it sticks us over here, and we buy into this idea that, because I gave into that illusion, now God's over there somewhere. Friends, that's a grander, more painful illusion. God's not over there somewhere. Listen, come with me for a second. Wherever you are, whatever feels like the barrier, God's not over there somewhere. God's over here. He's trying to lead. He's trying to guide. He's trying to restore. He's trying to build. He's trying to make something beautiful out of something broken. He's trying to free and unencumber, and he's trying to like make a way and make it straight and clear. God, he's over here. He's over here. Now, let me just ask you. Right now, in your life, where do you feel like God is? Where do you think God is? And more important than what you feel and what you think, what does your living say? What does your living say about where you think God is? What do your prayers say about where you think God is? What does your worship say about where you think God is? What do your relationships say? What do your actions say? What do your fears say about where you think God is? God's over here, friends. God, like he's with us. He's with us.